Welcome back to Roto Moto. My name is Donnie. In this video, I will cover 5 riders I want you to look at when making your PulpMX fantasy picks for Thunder Valley, tips for picking FFL, the weather report, race day schedule, and a very early look at what my team could be come Saturday. But first, let's take a moment to recap what went down at Fox Raceway. Shockingly, we had almost as many players choose a team for the opening round of Outdoors as they did for the closing round of Supercross. 10,799 might not seem like a ton, but last year for round 1, almost half that. The championship team count seemed a little low at 5,591, but still more than we had total players combined in 2020, so I feel like Steven Marks will take it. The perfect team would have brought home a whopping 646 points with 2 perfect 100s and 2 more 99 plus riders. A team made up of just the most popular riders would have finished with a 456, good for a top 650 finish in the championship league, showing that riders that seem like good picks often are. About 1 out of 5 players picked each FFL, with half of them nailing the 250 and 77% of them nailing the 450, which I would assume was mostly AC and not a ton of Roxon picks. The median championship score was lower than I expected, only 381, but the Outdoors are harder to gauge. All-Stars per team were only picked at a rate of 2.53 per team, lower than every week of Supercross but one, and significantly less than round 1 in Houston. Only 19 riders scored 44 points or more, which is essentially the mark you need to meet to count as double points in both motos. For reference, there were 45 non-all-stars on the track with a handicap lower than 18, so that is just under half of those that successfully did it. 93.3% worth of pick trend, roughly 1 rider per team failed to score even 22 points, meaning that they missed double points in both of their motos. Half of that number coming from Nate Thrasher alone, with another quarter from the Pro Circuit riders not named Austin Forkner. The highest score in the RotoMoto League was Die Haas with a massive 574 score, leading the entire PulpMX championship field and 55 points higher than his second place player in the league. His team was fueled by Mosman and Marchbanks having 2 perfect motos, and Ferrandis and Plessinger both bringing home 90 plus each. I was so relieved to start the season on a good foot after struggling indoors. 481 on the weekend for me. I also had 2 100-250 scores and 1 of the 90 plus star guys. Unfortunately, Drake and Savachi split their motos, and AC tanked in my 450 all-star spot after I tinkered too much and dropped Justin Barcia, who maxed out. Adam did bring me the FFL though, so at least that almost makes up for it. This one round brought me up from around 850th after the final Supercross to 337th in the total championship. We're only 1 race in and we already have a full batch of riders on the sidelines. Pro Circuit took a big hit with Seth Hammaker out for the round and Cameron McAdoo out for the summer. Joey Crown is on the entry list but is not planning to line up for this round. The 450 class had its first major injury, with Jason Anderson leaving the outdoor season early again with 6 to 8 week return from a broken hand. Lupino and Thompson both return home to prepare for their own series, and Tyler Medaglia will sit out the Colorado round and return in 2 weeks. Henry Miller is nursing an injury for a few weeks and will not make his debut until likely July, and be sure to confirm that a rider is on the cheat sheets before putting them on your team. And for an even easier time, you can check the little box when selecting your team that says only show riders in AMA qualifying results to only show guys that have actually put down a qualifying lap time. It will still show you guys that could crash out, but hey, it's better than nothing. Alright, on to the second round of the 2021 season in Thunder Valley. I have 3 guys to target, 1 to avoid, and a high handicap guy to look for you gamblers out there. Starting with the little class and working our way up, the first rider I want you to look at is your 250 All-Star, and in that spot I have Michael Mosman. The Red Bull Troy Lee Designs Gas rider was eligible for double points last weekend, and despite my recommendation and his 15th fastest qualifying time, only had 10% of players to pick him and put him on their team. He rewarded those players with a perfect 100 after going 4-4 on the day. Now, that 4 handicap might not look like an amazing value for a 4-4 guy, but his outdoor credentials are actually quite good. You just have to look back a few seasons to get a usable sample size. Couple that with being on one of the KTM sister machines with the most horsepower will really come in handy at the rocky high altitude that Thunder Valley brings, and you have a recipe for 50-point potential out of an all-star spot this weekend. One rider that I do not want you to look at this week is Styles Robertson. He's not a rookie any longer and cannot use that as an excuse, but the Rockstar Husqvarna rider had great starts in both motos before sliding back in both of them. And in Moto 2, he slid back hard. In fact, after ending up 18th, I had to check the lap chart to see if he went down, but no, he just lost a few spots every lap before settling in the middle of the pack. His fastest lap of the moto and his average lap time were both outside the top 20 in a poll of only 40 guys, meaning he just straight up did not have any pace in the second moto. If it's a fitness issue, I just don't see how the conditions of Thunder Valley are going to be any better. Moving over to the 450 class, a lot of good options at the all-star spot, but I'm looking at the biggest leeway with Marvin Musquin, a 6th handicap after going 8-7 on the day. But keep in mind, Jason Anderson's broken hand means that's one less guy in front of him, theoretically moving him up to a 7-6 finish. The key to outdoors is just to minimize your DNFs, and your all-star spot as a perfect 50 is not common. Last week, out of all 16 All-Stars, only 3 of them maxed out, so it's best to stick with veteran talent in the 450 class that makes smart decisions. A double eligible rider in the 450 class to put on your early team is Christian Craig. Star Racing Yamaha's 3rd rider comes into the round with a 3 handicap, same as the round 1 after finishing 11-9 on the day. I don't think he's a huge potential pick, but looking back at Colorado round in 2020, Craig went 7-4 for Team HRC Honda for his 2nd best result of the season. If I'm being honest, I don't love a lot of picks in the 450 class for this round, so I would play it a little safer and shoot to lock in double for both motos. The high handicap hero of the round given to a rider with a handicap of 10 or more that I think has a realistic chance to score massive points this weekend if you're the type of person that likes to sweat out 2 30-minute motos for a big payout. For Thunder Valley, I want you to look at Rami Alves. Did you know that Alves has been a top 20 threat outdoors since 2018? Neither did I, but after listening to the Pulp Pod where they cracked that Alves was an indoor guy, I went digging and found out that he was 22nd overall here in 2018 with a 1921 moto score for Thunder Valley, and has done as well as 1812 in an outdoor event as recently as 2019. He never seems to be a hot lap guy, indoor or out, qualifying 31st last weekend, so don't be too scared if his qualifying time is not up to snuff, but he showed up for the motos with mid-pack starts and creeped forward just a bit to end up 24-21 on the day, which is 16 handicap could put him over 60 points. The 250 FFL would likely come down to the star bikes. Again, Martin and Cooper were all over the front of the pack, and with the high altitudes, I expect that to continue this round. If you want to take a flyer, though, it's worth noticing that Max Volan started 1-3 on the weekend for the best average start in the class, although I don't think I'm enough of a believer to put him on my team. The 450 side is a little bit more clear. The first 2 FFLs of the season went to Roxon and Cianciarulo, guys that are constantly leading the first lap indoors and out. I had AC on my team last week, and I think I'll have him for FFL again here on Saturday. It's going to be a hot one in Lakewood, Colorado for Saturday's motos. The gates will drop to 87-degree temperature with a little cloud cover and the gentlest of breeze, and it will stay that way all the way until the final podium. I would be wary of picking anyone who doesn't do well in hot conditions, as even though it is only mid-80s, the altitude will make it that much more grueling. The race day schedule is a typical outdoor, but that mountain time set is in a weird time slot. Those on the East Coast should tune in to the Peacock app at 12 p.m. noon for qualifying, which is 9 a.m. on the West Coast. I will have qualifying cheat sheets ready for the Patreon supporters as soon as the final 450 session wraps up. The rest of you will find it on Twitter and Instagram after the consolation races to fill in the final 4 spots in each moto, and those wrap up about 45 minutes before the first moto gates drop. Before I show you my early team for Thunder Valley, I just wanted to remind you that this is an entirely privateer operation. I research, write, shoot, edit, and post every single video myself, in addition to making the cheat sheets and all of the content I post on here, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to support me and help the channel grow, please consider checking out some of the merch at RotoMoto.co, including our super rad Never Change AMA shirt that was recently featured on the PulpMX show. And if you are serious about upping your fantasy game, consider subscribing to Patreon for access to an additional podcast for every race, our private Discord server, and most importantly, the enhanced cheat sheets that are packed full of so much race day data, it'll make your head spin. And if you want to support but don't have the scratch to spare, the easiest way to help is by subscribing to the channel, commenting something constructive on the videos, and sharing the social media posts with your friends. My Thursday team looks like this. I have Jeremy Martin as my all-star for the 250 squad. J Mart was 4-2 at Thunder Valley last year behind 2 guys that moved up, so I love his 2 handicap. Max Volan at a 4 after how much time he spent up front in round 1. I have Pierce Brown at a 6, hoping for more of that top 10 magic he showed in Moto 2, and Ty Masterpool, whose handicap rose to a 10 despite him riding inside the top 10 for a long while last round. 450 squad, I have Marvin Musquin for the reasons before. I'm pairing him with Christian Craig at a 3 handicap, Eli Tomac at his home track where he has won 4 of the last 6 motos, and Filthy Phil Nicoletti at a 10 handicap, hoping he overachieves after a very disappointing opening round. I'm very likely skipping the 250 FFL but locking AC in for the 450 FFL. Don't forget to follow RotoMoto on Twitter and Instagram for qualifying insights, injury updates, stats, and banter as the race goes on, and of course those ever important fantasy cheat sheets. And if you want even more help making your picks, be sure to check out and subscribe to RotoMoto on Patreon for access to the enhanced cheat sheets chocked full of more data than you could imagine to help you make those huge point picks. I want to give a shout out to the current Patreon supporters. This channel is made possible by good people like Cora L, B Hood, and Keith H. Thanks as always for watching RotoMoto. My name is Donnie. I will see you on race day.